Hello, so this is Magnus versus Hikaru. This game happened a few years ago and it happened in a rapid format. Let's see what happens. This is just a showcase of how Magnus destroys. Here we go. Magnus plays the English Open and they go into the 4 knights variation, which is basically a battle for the center. Magnus then pushes d3 and Hikaru goes d5. This is all theory. This is known as the flexible line. Magnus takes the pawn, Hikaru takes back, and first move out of theory, Magnus pushes the pawn into the center. Maybe tempting the knight to take. Hikaru doesn't take and he makes an inaccuracy. This isn't a very good move because Magnus recaptures and then the center is kind of gone. Now Magnus can advance these pawns and it's kind of looking better for white already. If you look at the eval bar, eval is like, Magnus pushes his pawn into the center, controlling pretty much the entirety of the center. Pretty good opener so far for Magnus. Hikaru then brings his bishop out, which the engine really doesn't like either. I guess so he can, I don't know, because this is surely happening at one point, right? Magnus plays h3 to stop Hikaru from bringing his bishop to g4. Hikaru just castles. Nice and calm so far. White has a slight lead in terms of the actual position. I mean, look at White's pawns in the center. And now Magnus can advance in the center and start creating some chances. But he doesn't do that yet. He plays a3. I guess to try and stop some sort of jumps with the knight and the bishop. But computer says it's a mistake. But the computer doesn't know anything, bruv. My man Hikaru plays a6 just to join the club. Magnus goes bishop c4, and I guess now he wants to get castled. I feel like this move right here is such a Hikaru move. Boom. King h8. I mean, you may be thinking like, why doesn't he protect against this? Because this is going to be coming anytime soon. And he just plays that move. Like, that is like a stockfish move, isn't it? I mean, it makes sense to try and get out of the pin, but like, anyone below 2,000 rated would never play that move. I would never play that move. And I'm a GM, bro. Magnus seizes the opportunity, pushes the pawn into the center. Look at that bishop. That bishop is getting trapped, bruv. Hikaru goes back, as you would. Magnus then advances the pawn again. Oh my god, we are chasing, bruv. Hikaru a5 with the knight, trying to go after the bishop, which is here on c4. Magnus drops it back, because he doesn't want to, you know, blunder his bishop. Hikaru then tries to launch a queenside attack with b5, maybe threatening to play b4 at one point. Magnus castles, position looks safe, this pawn's kind of there, the pawns are in the center. Just look at this position. Like, would you rather be black or white? Of course you'd rather be white, right? Look at that. Look at this. It's cool. It looks good for white. Magnus sees how strong his center is and challenges with f6. As white here, you don't really want to take, because if you do take, you kind of lose your advantage, because after he takes back, now he's got an attack on this side of the board, and Magnus is maybe not attacking this pawn anymore because it's easily defended, and he's only got one center pawn. So Magnus doesn't take the pawn, and launches his own pawn forward, trying to bait Hikaru into moving his knight back, because that's kind of the only move. If he goes here, it's kind of passive, like this move is kind of passive, and then white gains like a big advantage, because now maybe this move's inbound. So Hikaru doesn't really have any squares, so his only move, so Hikaru plays that move, but that move isn't very good for black, because now Magnus takes that knight off. Isn't it crazy that people always say the bishops are the best things in chess? Bishop pair? Oh, yes, please. Magnus is proving right now that the bishop pair doesn't mean anything. He's just given his bishop pair away in exchange for the 2 knights. Because now, boom, look at that pawn. Look how strong his pawns are up there. It's so strong. Like, how are you stopping this, Hikaru? Hikaru! Aha! Hikaru goes b7 with his bishop, trying to get some sort of development, maybe an attack on that pawn. He needs to do something about these pawns in the center because they're so strong right now. Magnus brings his queen up to threaten to win these pawns. Computer doesn't like it, but it makes perfect sense. I guess if he takes this pawn, then this pawn falls, but at the moment, this pawn is just hanging. Right? Hikaru plays the best move, which is just c6, just a casual c6, threatening to then win this pawn. Maybe he can even push in the future, but not right. Crazy move here. Magnus can actually push this pawn, which is kind of bonkers, but if he takes, then this is kind of inbound, and this is kind of difficult to stop. But Magnus doesn't play that. Magnus plays, boom, he just takes the pawn, and he loses a slight bit of his advantage. Black recaptures that pawn. Magnus takes the other pawn. Rook c8 to attack the stranded knight. Magnus jumps it back, maybe to develop it back out here at one point. Hikaru thinks for a little bit and plays bishop d6. Attacking the queen. At first, this move kind of looks like a lower level player move, but then you consider that maybe he'll be coming back here and then he'll have a really strong diagonal at one point. I was thinking, isn't that just like a one move threat? Like you just jump out of the way. But then there's so much potential in the long term. Maybe the queen could start jumping here and then you never know, you never know. So Magnus jumps his queen out of the way. Hikaru carries on with the queenside attack and tries to challenge this pawn here. Basically, he wants to try and chip away at these pawns. He hopes that Magnus will take, which he's not going to. and then black can recapture, and then at least like one of the pawns gone, and now there's less pawns on this side of the board to worry about, sort of. But Magnus doesn't take, because he's M. Carlsen, and he moves his knight into a better position, protecting this pawn, and also maybe thinking about jumps like this in the future. Hikaru challenges this pawn, and straight away Magnus plays that. I think this was like the quickest move in the game. Doesn't blunder this pawn, it's still protected, and it also attacks this. Hikaru doesn't want to lose his bishop because his bishop's going to become quite strong. So he drops it all the way back to that square that we were just talking about. Nice. Magnus C1 offers the rook trade. Computer doesn't like it. Computer thinks that white's position right now is kind of strong and Magnus should just hold on. Top engine move is D1 there. Just to hold on to this. Keep an eye on this pawn. Keep an eye on this. But Magnus doesn't play it. Magnus plays C1. Hikaru plays C4 in an attempt to maybe hope Magnus takes and advances his own pawn. This is a double-edged move as well. Not only it offers the exchange, it also threatens to win a pawn. But Magnus doesn't care about the pawn, and he just moves his knight back to d4, back to protecting this again. Black trades off one pawn, and then moves his bishop, double attacking this, pinning the knight. Magnus just calmly pushes his b5 pawn, so he avoids being taken. Hikaru goes c5, which is one of the top moves. Just continuing to have this pin, while also maybe getting the bishop into a better position in the future. King moves to the side to get out of the pin, and also threaten to win this pawn. Hikaru doubles up on the pin, so now he's got 3 attackers on this piece. Magnus takes the rook, because now if he takes, obviously it doesn't work. And Hikaru captures back with a pawn, Magnus takes the pawn. Position is still looking strong for white, but it's, I mean, anything could happen. He's got a few pawns sailing, but anything could happen. Hikaru takes the bishop, and Magnus recaptures with his knight. Hikaru then recaptures the loose pawn on e6, and then Magnus just plays g3. Probably a waiting move, waiting for something else to happen so he can then advance, because at the moment he wants his pawn to go somewhere, but it's kind of being bombarded by like 3 pieces. Hikaru jumps his rook all the way back to the back rank. His king's not looking entirely safe, so he just wants some safety, and maybe he wants to move his queen, and if he moves his queen, then the rook will be safe, because the queen was taking care of the rook. Magnus then goes g2 to get his king a bit more safety. I guess it just feels a bit safe being out of the pin. Hikaru doubles up on the pawn, threatening to win this pawn, and Magnus brings his rook there. Important move right there. You may be thinking, why didn't he go here? Because if he now takes, he loses a piece, so it doesn't quite work. Hikaru jumps his bishop all the way back to the back rank. Still tension on this pawn. Magnus brings his knight in to protect this pawn once more. Hikaru doesn't really have anything he can do on this side of the board, so he launches a pawn. h5. Magnus jumps his knight in, threatening to win this. If, for example, Hikaru takes the pawn, then this is losing because of this variation here. Now he's just up a piece. So black goes a3, c3. Fancy trade from Hikaru. Magnus takes the bishop. Hikaru takes the knight. Look at this endgame right now. c5. Just eyeing up this pawn on the long diagonal, protecting this. Like, white is looking so good. Black doesn't have any checks. Black drops back to protect the pawn. King over, attacking the rook in the corner. Hikaru brings his rook to d8. Magnus drops his queen back just to protect and maybe spy on this pawn. Black goes g6 because he doesn't really have any moves. And it's time for the pawn to run, baby. b6, d7, check on c8, back rank. King goes up, queen comes in. King gets some safety because if the king stays on this rank, this thing's happening. And then he's losing. h4, clamp down the position, pushes, takes. f5, and then Magnus offers the trade. This is completely winning for white at this point. Hikaru can't have the trade like that, so he offers it in a different way with a check. Magnus, of course, takes. Rook takes. And pawn goes a-flying. Hikaru brings his rook to b5 to stop it from queening. But at this point, the game's kind of over. f4. And now black's king can't do anything. Black only has checks. And then king can start getting up in the board. And at this point, Hikaru resigns and Magnus wins. Now we're talking, dude. Kind of crazy game. Showing you the accuracy for this game. Magnus played at 89.6 and Hikaru played at 84. Kind of bonkers game. This was the Tata Steel in India in 2019, and Magnus went on to win this Tata Steel, and Hikaru came second. So, I mean, they both did amazing, and they both played a great game here. I want to know from you guys, what's your favorite Magnus game? If you have one, drop a comment below, and I'll make a video about it. Drop a like, guys, and have a good day. See you later. Bye.